Okay, so it is just after midnight, so it's technically June 18th. Let's see if I can walk through this code and see what we see. I'm not going to guarantee I have the answer. Sometimes just walking through it can help. It's like that you hear people talk about you have a rubber duck on your desk and you talk to your rubber duck when you're coding and when you have a problem. I find it very helpful to do the same sort of thing, but I'll take a video just speaking out loud. It serves the same purpose. So I'm going to cut your code here and try to see if I can see what's going on. So you've got your, right? We're in a Create React app. So it updates over here. I've got this thing split here. I got my developer tool. It's like this is like the console. If you don't have the React Dev Tools extension, you should definitely get that. Because then once you have that, you'll have this tab here for React. It might be hidden right in here first time you use it or whatever. So you find the React, and then it shows you what's going on in your page here. It shows you what's the state right now. Instead of having to like console log somewhere in your React code, like to say console log this.state, you don't need to do that because it shows you right here at any given time what the state is. Right now, the very beginning, the quote, the state has quotes and an array with two objects and a search with an empty string, which we're going to get to. Okay, so the first thing you did here was you set up an array with two objects, two quote objects, right? So we got that. That's what that is. Let's get that out of the way. All right, here we're defining our class, our component. Class search extends component. You get the constructor so that we can use state, right? This.state equals search is an empty string and quotes is quotes, which quotes is the property and the value quotes is coming from this array that you made, right? Which makes sense. Okay, so this is established before anything happens. First thing that happens in React before the render is the constructor, right? So the very first thing that happens, you're saying this is what the state is. So there's no surprise that when we open this file, we already have the state that quotes is the array and the search is empty string because that's what we're saying right there. Okay, no problem. Update search event. Okay, so this is a some sort of action that happens later down when we change the form over here, right? Okay, so then we're gonna render what we want to see on the page. You're saying you don't want to see the quotes when the page first loads. Okay. What you're saying here, though, is go to the state and the quotes, which is an array of two objects, and map over those two objects, right? So it's going to take the current quote, the first one, and it's saying, all right, so the current quote is an object, right? That has a property quote. You're saying, does that quote include this.state.search? Right now, this.state.search is an empty string. Not even yeah. So yeah, it's going to display it right there. You're telling it to, right? I think at that point, since it finds it in the first thing, it doesn't even matter what the rest of these ORs are. It found this, it stops, it displays the first one. So it's displaying. So you're saying if it has it, do this, right? If this is true, do this. It is true, so it's saying taking the quote and the author and displaying it. There's the quote by Albert from the play, where it came, right? And then it goes on to the second quote from the quotes array. And the same thing for the same reason. There's an empty string within that, right? Somewhere in there, there's nothing, or I mean, like an empty string, or a space, or so it's displaying that one also, right? So that's why, as soon as you start typing, if I do, let's say I'm going to try to search for diamonds. What happens if I do the search term is D? So there's a lowercase d in here. There's a lowercase d in here, so they both stay, right? How about if I do the capital D from diamonds? So then you see this, that changed the state, right? So that's because you have down here, right? Hopping around a little bit. It's the input. You're saying every time this input changes, right? On change, do this, right? This dot update search to find this. All right, that's where you're calling this. So every time anything changes in here, go do this. And you're telling it to do is set the state to event that target to value, right? So every time this changes, change the state dot search to this. That's why right now this is a capital D in here. You see down here, state dot search is capital D. Just keep changing it down. And you see every time that I change this, this updates right along with it, right? And it's not displaying, I think, because I can't spell DIM. As long as I've got diamonds there, it's going to keep displaying it until I misspell or something goes wrong. Okay. In fact, let's try something from the first quote. We'll do in fact. In fact, right? So as long as I keep typing things that are there, it displays just that one. But in the beginning, when there's nothing, it's displaying both because it is matching this. It doesn't include. I'm going to reload the page, right? It's looking, it's connecting. All right, they're both there at the start, which is, you're saying you don't want that, but it is matching. The search is not an empty string, and it matches that. Maybe if it was not includes, maybe if it's maybe you need to do something like if the state.search is empty string, don't display this yet. Instead of doing if it includes, so this is fine, but say current quote includes whatever the search is, but modify this so that it says, but if it's an empty string, don't display anything. Because apparently right now, this empty string, matching empty string, it's saying both of these have that somewhere in it. Maybe that gives you some clue to work on. On another note, I've read that instead of doing binding, doing this binding here on the on change, that the better way to do it is in the constructor. And the reason being that when you do it here, every time, in our app, it probably doesn't matter because it's tiny. It's not a big deal, but in a bigger app where there's more stuff going on, it can be a performance thing because every time you re-render, it has to do this binding. But if you do this instead of here, oops, wait, that's not right. Get rid of the bind this, right? If you do it here, inside the constructor, it only has to do it once when it creates the class. And it's again, for our thing, I don't think it makes any difference at all because it's such a small app and it's not a problem. Save, let's see if it restarts and it still works. Let's see if I did that right. Yeah, it looks like it's still working. Yeah, so still working. I don't know. Like I say, not a big deal. Just something I've read about recently. You put it up here. It's supposed to be a little more performant. I don't know. I could hopefully walking through that maybe something clicked in your mind. I don't know. I'll keep looking at it too if I get a chance. All right. I guess that's it for now. I don't want this to go on forever. Hope everybody's having a good night. Talk to y'all soon.